Hello, I'm Maurice Powell. Welcome to A Little Light Music, Manx Radio's regular Thursday evening classical music hour. Quite a varied programme, including a few very little known composers, but nevertheless I hope you'll find the programme entertaining. I'm going to start with an overture from an oratorio called David by Francesco Bartolomeo Conti. Now, I hear you cry, who is or was Francesco Bartolomeo Conti? Well, in his day he was extremely well known. He worked at the court of Dresden. He was officially the resident sort of theorbo player. Theorbo is a rather large lute, but he eventually became court composer. He wrote an enormous number of masses, he wrote operas and oratorios. The story of David, of course, is also the tragic story of the relationship, destructive and ultimately tragic, between David, the future king, and the existing king Saul, who became very, very jealous of David's achievements. It's a very fine oratorio, very powerful, quite operatic in places, unlike a typical English oratorio that Handel developed. It's a bit short of choruses, which is why we don't hear them very often. These Italian oratorios were more like operas in style. Nevertheless, it contains some wonderful music, and I'll try and play an excerpt in a future programme. But to start us off this evening, here is then the overture to Conti's oratorio, David. The overture there to Conti's Oratorio David. I rather like that piece. It's quite anxious in the faster middle section. Maybe that's a kind of a portrait of King Saul. And now to Dvorak. Now, I did play some Dvorak, quite a bit of Dvorak last week, but I couldn't resist choosing this piece, mainly for the benefit of the choral society members among you. Obviously, the Choral Society, the Isle of Man Choral Society, the Old Teachers Choir, the Ramsey Choral Society are very adventurous in some of the works they choose to perform. As far as Dvorak's concerned, I've certainly been to at least 3 performances of the Stabat Mater over the last 20 years or so. Marvellous piece. But I've never heard live the Te Deum, and it would be a wonderful piece to do here in the Villa Marina if anybody's listening. I imagine it lasts probably 30 minutes, so it would nicely fill a good section of a concert. I'm going to play the opening Te Deum Laudamus, of this work. It was written in 1892, and it's Dvorak's last sacred composition. It was premiered in New York, where Dvorak spent some time in the early 1890s, and was immediately popular. This is one of the most arresting and exciting openings of any choral work. Exultant, I think, might be the word for it. It's written for a very large orchestra, chorus, soprano and baritone soloists. So the opening movement then of Dvorak's magnificent Te Deum of 1892. The opening movement, Te Deum Laudamus, from Dvorak's Te Deum of 1892, and a beautiful soprano solo there. I must apologise for the cut-off there suddenly. Sometimes with the compact discs that have several different movements, they don't just stop or move smoothly. They suddenly cut off, which is a bit alarming. So I hope that it didn't spoil your enjoyment of that piece. You certainly didn't miss a note. It was just a rather abrupt silence. So we'll move on. We need something now a little bit less exultant and exciting, and I've gone back to a light music classic, which I have played before, but as it's a classic, we can certainly hear it again. This is Cecil Armstrong Gibbs's Slow Waltz Dusk. It was from a dance suite he wrote called Fancy Dress. Dusk. The lovely atmospheric Slow Waltz Dusk by Cecil Armstrong Gibbs. And now to something a little bit unusual and another composer that certainly won't be familiar. The composer is Justin Heinrich Knecht. Fair enough, I hadn't heard of him either until a few months ago when I came across a charming symphony by him, written around 1782-3. It's a pastoral symphony entitled A Portrait of Nature. Now, the best known pastoral symphony, of course, is Beethoven's, but His Pastoral Symphony, that's number 6 in F major, is by no means the first Pastoral Symphony. There's a tradition of pastoral music going right back to Vivaldi, of course, with the Four Seasons, coming up through Haydn and his wonderful countryside, if I may call it that, oratorio, The Seasons, and much else besides. Knecht, don't know very much about him. He was a musical director at the Imperial City of Biberach, and his Pastoral Symphony obviously predates Beethoven's by 20 or more years. It's a very attractive piece. Like the Beethoven work, it has a storm and a village dance, and the whole thing would last probably half an hour. I'm just going to play the first movement, which is a bit more relaxing. There were no storms today. We've had enough of storms, I think. So I hope you enjoy it. Justin Heinrich Knecht's Pastoral Symphony. The opening movement there of a pastoral symphony, a portrait of nature by the little-known 18th century composer Justin Heinrich Knecht. Now I can hear certainly foreshadowings of Beethoven's much better-known pastoral symphony. I thought that was an interesting piece. There is a storm movement a little bit later on, and even some shepherds and village dancing as well. I don't know whether Beethoven knew this particular piece. It really depends on how widespread the music was. But he may well have done it. I think it would have been a popular piece in Beethoven's youth. Anyway, moving on. Two extraordinary voices now and two lovely arias for them to sing. The first is one of my favourite singers, Cecilia Bartoli, the mezzo-soprano. A voice is not to everyone's taste. Some people find it has there's an irritating quality about it. I don't quite know what they mean by that. She's certainly capable of singing incredibly fast runs, beautifully, accurately, and she puts a lot of emotion into everything she sings. Maybe it's a little over the top from time to time, but to say it doesn't really bother me. I'm going to play the aria of Peace, the Aria della Pace, from a Christmas cantata by Alessandro Scarlatti, the great 17th and 18th century Italian opera composer and father of the great harpsichordist Domenico Scarlatti. It's a Christmas cantata written in 1707. The Aria of Peace, the words are as follows. Attention, fierce warriors, what are you doing? Shatter your trumpets, surrender to me, for beneath the star of peace all is changed. In other words, your weapons must fall silent at the birth of the Christ child. Here's the Aria of Peace then from Scarlatti's Christmas cantata.
Accesi, allarme si accesi, guardate, guardate che fate, che trombe spizzate, vedete a me, vedete a me, che fate, che trombe spizzate, vedete a me, vedete a me, mi aspetto in fasce stretto trionfa il mio re. Che nastro di pace cangiato mi aspetto in fasce stretto trionfa il mio re. Trionfa il mio re, trionfa il mio re. Accesi, allarme accesi, guardate, guardate che fate, che trombe spezzate, vedete a me, vedete a me, che fate, che trombe spezzate, vedete a me, vedete a me.
The, what should we say, show-stopping aria of peace from a Christmas cantata of 1707 by Alessandro Scarlatti. I have recordings of probably a dozen oratorios by Scarlatti and 2 or 3 operas, and they're full of wonderful things, but comparatively little known today. Right, my second extraordinary voice is indeed very extraordinary and very rare today, and in fact quite rare in the 18th century when this music was written. The music is by Handel. It's from his opera Atalanta, and it's a beautiful aria called Caro Salve. The singer is Samuel Marinho from Venezuela, and he is a soprano, a male soprano. Now, as you probably know, in the 18th century, the most highly paid and revered singers were castrati. In other words, they had all been castrated as young boys if their voices were thought to be good enough. A disgusting practice, really, which died out by the end of the 18th century, but not quite. Even Rossini wrote a part for a castrato, and I think even Meyerbeer, but not much after that, I don't think. How on earth they got anybody to volunteer is a mystery to me. I suspect there's a lot of cruelty involved in it. The sad thing is that of all the young boys that had wonderful voices in their teens, maybe 1 in 1,000, 1 in 5,000, 1 in 10,000, who knows, actually became a superstar singer as an adult. But the ones that did, Farinelli, Senesino, like that. Others, in fact, the castrato that this was written for, Gioacchino Conti, was known as Gisiello. They all had fabulous careers, but they were the exception. Now, the soprano castrato voice was a rarity even in Handel's day. Most of the castrati were mezzo-sopranos or altos, equivalent to our sort of mezzo-soprano or contralto voice. The soprano castrati were extremely rare. So this young Venezuelan singer has a very special gift indeed. So here's Handel then, Caro Salve, sung by Samuel Marinho. The extraordinary voice there of Samuel Mourinho, a very rare male soprano singing music by Handel from his opera Atalanta. Now, last week I played a movement from a concerto for two bassoons by a very little known 18th century composer called Ritter. And a number of you enjoyed the piece. Well, I guess you probably would. It was very catchy and very whimsical. I mean, two bassoons bubble along very happily, and it was a very well-written piece. So I've been looking out for something similar to sort of, tickle your fancy a little bit. And I've come across a concerto for four solo instruments by Peter von Winter. Now, the name Peter von Winter was mentioned briefly last week because the composer Louis Spohr wrote a clarinet piece, which I played last week, based on two themes from an opera by Peter von Winter. So here is the movement then from a Sinfonia Concertante, a concerto really for violin, clarinet, horn and bassoon. This is the finale. Like Ritter from last week, Peter von Winter grew up in the Mannheim Orchestra, the famous Mannheim Orchestra that Mozart was so impressed with in the 1770s. He played the violin in that orchestra at the age of 10, good heavens, and went on to be a very well-known composer. So Peter von Winter, the finale of his concerto for violin, clarinet, horn and bassoon. The finale there of a rather fine piece, I think, Peter von Winter's Sinfonia Concertante for violin, clarinet, horn and bassoon. Now, most Sinfonia Concertante were written by composers who are now not well known, which is a pity, because the ones I know are of that quality and are well worth hearing. Mozart also wrote Sinfonia Concertante. Unfortunately, he didn't finish most of them. The best known one is the Sinfonia Concertante for violin and viola. He also wrote one in Paris for 4 wind instruments, but it's lost. And in Salzburg, he wrote one for violin and piano, which is half finished, and another one which he half finished for violin, viola and cello. So we would have had a lot more of these kind of multiple instrument concertos by Mozart, but he just never got round to completing them. Anyway, let's move on. We need a light music piece now. Cyril Waters, or Cyril Waters probably, a Willow Waltz of 1958. Another composer not very well known to me. He started life as a jazz-style pianist, rather like Billy Mayle, and then he spent most of his career writing music for the recorded music libraries, short mood pieces. He also wrote the theme music for a TV serial called The World of Tim Fraser. I really do not remember it at all. The World of Tim Fraser, perhaps like many others of that era, it rose without trace. However, Cyril Waters, Willow Waltz. very attractive piece, that. Cyril Waters' Willow Waltz. And that brings us to the end of the programme. I hope you've enjoyed my selection. I certainly enjoy sifting through piles of CDs to find interesting things. What's coming up next week? Absolutely no idea at all. But I hope you'll join me. To play us out then, music by Roger Quilter, famous for his songs but for much else besides, from his children's play Where the Rainbow Ends, Will of the Wisp. Goodbye.